Welcome to the Dubcast with Dubside. This is a special guest edition of the Dubcast, and I'll be talking to Sepanta, a woman who lives in Greenland. And for the purposes of this podcast, she will be like me and only have one name, Sepanta. She works in Greenland as an impact assessment advisor. And she has also been to many parts of the world, including Antarctica and Africa. And she's spent some time in East Greenland. If you recall, some time ago I mentioned how Brian Schultz was doing a GoFundMe to help send an East Greenland team to the kayak competition in West Greenland. And Sepanta knows some of those people and was involved in some of that. And towards the end of the interview, I was asking her about Greenlandic music. So this runs somewhat less than 45 minutes.
You told me your name is Sep because I couldn't get your whole name straight, but I'll get your whole name straight now. So it's
Sepanta.
Sepanto.
Yeah, or Sepanta is fine.
Sepanta.
Sep works fine too.
Sepanta.
Exactly.
Sepanta. And that's, you are from originally?
So I was born and raised in France, but I have a mixed background with Persian origins and also French and Spanish.
Yeah.
And a Greenlandic heart, obviously.
So your original language is
French.
French.
Yeah,
okay.
basically French.
And obviously you speak English, and you're picking up a good deal more Greenlandic than I have, I'd say.
I'm trying to, and it's a very fun endeavor to learn Greenlandic, and I'm actually trying to learn also East Greenlandic, the dialect.
Yeah.
This is where I've spent the most of my time in Greenland, in East Greenland. And
so tell me how you got to Greenland in the first place.
Long story or short story? Short story. I've always been passionate about polar areas and nature and civilizations. I would say cultural diversities.
All right.
And I would say this very, very obviously and naturally led me towards Greenland. It was a very natural path in this sense. So I started after my engineering school. I've been living in Antarctica on a scientific station for more than a year.
Wow.
Yeah. That was a fantastic experience, and it totally clicked. Like, okay, I knew that's what I really wanted to do, and I loved the polar landscapes, but not only visiting for short time. The beauty of it really was about spending time and living there and being immersed in this environment and being kind of part of its environment in a way. As of course in Antarctica we are not like they're not autochthone populations or they are not indigenous inhabitants. Let's say inhabitants that used to live there. The only inhabitants are living there on 1 year shifts and no more.
Okay.
So.
And you were there for a year as part of work?
Yeah, exactly. That was for work.
Okay.
That was field work.
What exactly were you doing? Tell me about that.
I was doing field work for polar research programs, and my focus was on climate monitoring. So it means atmospheric sampling every day, and also laboratory chromatographic analysis and performing glacier mass balance on the ice cap. And on my free time, I would spend all my time with the emperor penguins, giving a hand on the emperor colony monitoring programs, sitting for hours in the cold and the wind, just watching them and looking for the ones who had numbers on them. And that was absolutely wonderful.
You do that from a distance with binoculars or something, or you get close?
Yeah, it depends. It depends. Sometimes distance with binoculars, but some because the colony might be very spreaded, so it's easier sometimes to check. But obviously,
that's done all throughout the year.
Yeah, throughout the year, and then there's the whole breeding
so you're
cycle.
out there in like what kind of temperatures watching penguins?
It's not as cold as we would expect, I guess, because we're along the Antarctic coastline.
Mm-hmm.
But in summer we can have positive temperatures, and if it's sunny and without wind, it can be actually very warm.
Yeah.
Also with the albedo, the reflection of the sun on the snow, and so it can feel very warm. But in the deep of winter time, I would say we had maybe down to minus 34, but it's also very windy. So the fact and like the reason, the way we feel the temperature, it's actually when you stay many hours outside without moving too much, and with winds
really,
and this.
Really
so
extreme,
that was kind of the cold. But the station was always nearby, so I would just go up, make some hot coffee, hot chocolate, and go back to the emperor penguins. So yeah, I would say that was. I knew that what I've always known. That's what the kind of life I wanted to have, and I felt comfortable with. It started with hiking in mountains when I was a kid, with the glaciers and everything. But then from there, I wanted to build my skills on impact assessments, how human activities impact the environment, and also I was interested in communities, like the life of communities impacted by development projects. And I really focused on that, and for the following 8 years, maybe, I've been working a lot in African countries.
Oh, yeah? Where in Africa?
So I would be based in France. I tried to be based in countries where the project were, but it has not been possible, unfortunately. But I've worked a lot in Guinea, in Burkina Faso, in Côte d'Ivoire, in Togo. Mostly sub-Saharan African countries.
So you got hot climates and cold climates.
Yeah, I do.
Wow.
Kind of a mix, but that's fine. And so then I always try to aim to develop the next steps of my career and life towards the Arctic. Right. I was always super curious of the Inuit cultures, Inuit worlds, and that's how so for years I've been building up my skills with technical trainings, and I've been studying in Svalbard for 2 months. I've been then following Inuit hunters on social media just to try to be. I was very, very curious and always very passionate about these populations who know how to live in who have a very strong cultural heritage about how to live in these polar conditions and without necessarily supply from big ships, even though of course now supply is a big part, of course, even of life now, but as part of the cultural heritage, and it's still very much alive in many Arctic territories.
So when you focused on Greenland, how is it that you got to East Greenland?
So I had seen in 2019 a job offer for a teaching position in East Greenland, and
teaching what, English or
no, it's like in a village of 80 inhabitants, and
just general teaching.
So it's basically, so they have a primary school, and with at that time it was maybe about 10 pupils, and so it was about, the position was open to anyone who would be ideally a trained teacher speaking Kalaallisut, Greenlandic, or East Greenlandic, even better. So with a number of criteria, but that are in reality really hard to meet.
Yeah, so they would just get nobody applying for the position if they were that strict.
Yes and no. I think for this kind of position, they need people who are used to work in remote places, who can deal with living in a remote community that is not so easy to access. It's not the level of comfort we have in other places, and I think it's important to have people who commit, and ideally people who can stay also. But it's that's the whole package is not that easy to find. And
Staying for what, like more than a year, more than 5 years?
no, the contracts are for 3 years.
3 years. So they get people who take the job and then just quit after 6 months or something?
No, after a year or 3 years, depends.
Okay.
But ideally it would be inhabitants, ideally. But
Inhabitants taking the job.
yeah, so
Okay,
of course, some of them take the job and go to. So once again, like to become a trained teacher, they have to move to Nuuk to follow a 4-year course, and it's quite long. So I knew there wasn't like. So I was immediately when I saw of course, the offer, it clicked as. I guess so many people can just fall in love with this kind of job offer, you know. But I also knew that beyond just the excitement of the job offer, I knew I could fit the role. And like, of course, I mean, I could fit the role. Not like I would be the ideal one because I don't speak Danish. I didn't speak the languages yet, but I have a lot of experience working with remote communities and in remote areas, and I have the endurance and so on. So I was super curious about it and very interested to investigate, let's say. And so I reached out to the school director, and so that I got a better idea of what kind of profile they would need for the position. And 2 years later, I reached out again, just saying, "Hi, I have 2 months available because I'm a freelance advisor, so I can manage my timing." I was like, okay, I have 2 months free. I would really love to go meet that community, and if you have any project I can contribute to, I would love to. So open doors, you know, to support a project, and if there was a way. And so also the idea behind was to see, with first experience of going there and seeing if I could see myself living there for 3 years, if it's really as I imagined it, like a reality check. I did a reality check.
Had you been to West Greenland before that at all?
No, not at all. No. It was, I just saw that village and I was like, okay, it should be really cool.
Yeah.
And so we managed to have that first contact, and I was invited. I was like, okay, you can come. You're welcome to come if you want to help build a kayak or twilik, make like the sealskin.
That was
outfits.
in the criteria. Besides just being a regular teacher for the
no,
school?
so it was not at all. It was not
just
at all
for the kayak stuff.
It was not for the application process. It was completely out of the. So that was 2 years after I saw the job offer. I was just in touch with this school. And so that's how I chose. Like I reached out 2 years later. Like okay, I would be happy to build experience there, and so that's how it really started. So then I've been. So the deal was I could go to that, help contribute to building a traditional kayak with the pupils, and of course under the lead of the school director. And in exchange, he would be hosting me at his place, and so that was the plan.
So that we're straight geographically.
Yeah.
East Greenland, there's Tasiilaq is the main town along the coast, and much farther north there's Itoqatumik, right? So we're talking about Tasiilaq. Tasiilaq. You pronounce it for me properly.
Tasiilaq.
Tasiilaq. Yeah, okay. And you were in Tasiilaq, or one of the little villages?
Yeah, exactly. One of the villages around.
All right. And so how many people are in that town? What's the size?
It's 80, sorry.
80 people, just 80 people?
Kind of. Then it depends.
Right, less than 100?
Sometimes. Yeah, less.
Okay.
But then, so I've been there for 2 months and a little bit. But I've been back to East Greenland, and because when I was there, I also connected with some people from Kulusuk, a Greenlandic family this time.
Okay.
And
Kulusuk is a different town,
yes.
different little village.
Yes, sorry. Okay. Yeah, Kulusuk is another village, and they were very welcoming and saying you should come to our village and spend some time with us. And I got welcomed. I've been very lucky to have some good friends who welcomed me to their place. So I've been in Kulusuk for most of my time.
All right.
So yeah.
So I'm interested in the differences between West Greenland and East Greenland.
Okay.
And I've been in West Greenland towns many times, and you have basic conveniences. You know, the store you can go till 8 or maybe 10 o'clock at night, and there's a couple different stores and things like that. Is that what you don't have in the little villages? Tell me about that.
There are. It's the beauty of Greenland. It's there is so much nuances between different places, from east to west or north to south. And also there are some things that you can find everywhere, like the connection to nature, the main stores, and there is like some kind of continuum also that links all these different remote places.
Yeah.
And I would say it really depends. It really depends of how you see life and your needs. For me, I was super. I think I could find anything I needed in the grocery shops, and it's good quality. It's tasty. It's super expensive in East Greenland, even more than West. But and also sometimes in the year you don't get the fresh products, so maybe you
like the supply.
Yeah, the supply
issues
may. Because also with the ice, the sea ice, also conditions may sometimes put some severe delays on the shipments. And beyond that, I would say East Greenland is also, if we just compare like this, I don't think the two are really comparable, but it's of course fewer inhabitants compared to Nuuk, let's say, or big cities. But we also have settlements anywhere in many places in the West Coast. But it's let's say if we draw the big lines, it has a very, very beautiful nature scenery, very spectacular, with very high like mountains, and wildlife is still quite preserved and present.
So what kind of wildlife do you see?
So you can see whales quite easily. Of course, a lot of seals. I got to see now whales, and I've seen many polar bears, but only in cook pots.
Only where?
In cooking pots.
In cooking pots. Oh, yeah. That's a good place to see them.
But I've never seen one alive, and to be honest, I prefer not, because they happen to be in the village from time to time, and I'd rather not encounter one. Yeah.
Wow. Do you have muskox in East Greenland?
No, not in this area. I think around Ittoqqortoormiit there is some muskox.
And caribou?
And caribous, there were before, some times ago, but not anymore. Yeah. But there are some research performed by the Nature Institute about the past of caribou populations in East Greenland.
All right. Are the main work there is fishing? Is that correct?
I can't say for sure, but there's definitely quite a lot of hunters, hunters. Yeah. The fishing industry is huge in Greenland. I think it represents 90% of Greenland experts. So it's very massive. So it depends if you're asking about industrial fishing or artisanal, like.
I guess both. I'm asking.
Yeah. So they recently opened a few months ago, maybe 2 months ago. They opened a new fishing factory in Tasiilaq, and so the aim is to draw some more, to promote more labor and work in this region. But we do have quite a lot of hunters active. Yeah.
All right. What kind of tourism is going on there? Not very much, or is it? Can you go there and somebody will give you a tour and they set up for that? You just have to tell me about that.
So the Greenlandic strategy for tourism is to expand its tourism activities and also to have a focus on exploration tourism, like
how's that different from regular tourism?
So I think it's. How can I say it? They would like to develop the dimension of what that's the word, exploration tourism. So adventurous tourism. So let's say for East Greenland, for instance, we do have many ships that visit, especially notably in Itotormit, where also the
In the
local
north.
population
Okay.
in the north, the local populations is sometimes complaining about having really too many boats. Even
These
if
are
it's just
like
sailboats.
cruise ships that stop there?
Cruise ships,
Okay.
yeah, and also sailboats. It's
Okay.
quite active. But the let's say the Greenlandic people and the local people, notably in Tasiilaq region, they are very appreciative of tourism because
Okay.
it's a good revenue. It's
Yeah.
like during the high season,
Yeah.
this is where they make good money, and it helps for them, of course, just to pay for the maintenance of their. I mean,
Yeah.
of their life, of their house,
Yeah.
of their. I mean, like anyone, for the snowmobile, for the dogs' food, for everything, and for their holidays, like anyone. So
Yeah.
it's tourism is very important for the local people, of course. And what
Right.
kind of tourism we have? It's mostly for now. It's mostly tours, either cruise ships or we have business operators who propose tours like for 4 days, 5 days, 6 days.
Okay.
And also, there are some less environmental friendly activities such as heli skiing.
What is it?
Heli skiing, people
Skiing with a helicopter?
exactly. Basically, people fly to Greenland for a week, and they are being dropped by helicopters on top of mountains,
Oh.
and then they can
Okay.
ski down. So I think right now Greenland is really drafting its new tourism regulation. There's a lot about
Yeah.
how it can benefit the local economy
Yeah.
as much as possible. But there are talks also about how to make this tourism the most sustainable as possible.
Yeah.
So it's really finding the balance between the sustainability and the economic growth of the country. I think Greenland is definitely a society evolving very fast in many ways. Like they have the self-government has been entered into force only quite recently.
Yeah.
It entered into force in 2009, so
Yeah.
it's quite recent.
Yeah.
And so all the regulation is moving. There's a huge momentum to attract investors, but also a lot of political talks about how not to have too much foreign labor.
Yeah.
And a lot is happening, and all the lines are still quite moving. And a friend of mine who lives in East Greenland, she came on holiday to Nuuk when I was there, and when we were walking in town, she was telling me, "Oh, I haven't been in Nuuk for 4 years, and I hardly recognize some of the streets
Yeah.
because it just been building up everywhere." And
Yeah.
Greenland is like a rainbow. You get so many nuances, and Nuuk is one of the extreme of the nuances,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. So tell me about the language difference between East Greenland and the rest of Greenland. Can you give me a word that's pronounced differently, or there are different words
Yeah,
used?
just let's say, for instance, what's your name? So in West Greenlandic Kalaallisut, it would be Kanok Atterarpi.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you pronounce it T at the end, so Kanok Atterarpit.
Yeah.
And in East
Wow.
Greenland, it would be Kane Alerarpi.
Wow. Okay.
Kane
I
Alerarpi.
can see that. So one would have to stop and
So
concentrate.
it's kind of the grammatical structure is exactly the same,
Yeah.
but then some words just are either pronounced differently or
Yeah.
the same, or are completely different.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So
Now you've seen some of the kids here at this kayak event this year in 2024. We had 5 kids from East Greenland, and you knew some of them before.
yeah, they're pretty brave, and it's a very cool event. Also, for their family back home, it's a huge pride to have them participating to this championship. And I welcome any donors on this podcast to support the team because it's so expensive, and I don't know the details of how they work for their club, but I know that
On my podcast here, we've interviewed Brian Schultz
okay.
from Oregon in the U.S.
Okay.
a couple of times. He's quite an interesting character. And he put together the GoFundMe thing that I think for the first time to get the Greenland folks in. I don't know if it was 2 times now or how it is, but he's been quite instrumental.
That's wonderful.
In that, so
and if I may say, like, thank you very much to all the listeners who contributed to that, because it means a lot for the families back there. And I can see it because I've been living with them, and I see their social medias and everything, and it's a huge pride. And also the championship.
They'll be coming home with their medals.
Yes,
around their necks.
and there will be a huge party. And last year they were welcomed by the boats from the village. So they've been welcoming them. Near Kulusuk, where the airport is, and so it's fantastic. And like the championship is also broadcasted live on the national TV, the KNR. And so the families, they're on TV, and the family is looking at that, and so some of the kids this year have been there before. Others, for others, it's the first time, and so it's super cool.
And that little village is the only place in East Greenland at the moment that has a kayak club that's sending kayak people to the competition.
So
in
in Tasiilaq there is a kayak house, I would say.
Okay.
I'm not quite familiar of how active it is. I don't think it's super active.
Okay.
There has been some kayak trainings for business operators or locals who would like to become guides. I think there has been some kind.
That's not Greenland style skin on frames. That's just fiberglass and plastic kayaks, or what?
I guess because but let's say like, for instance, in Kulusuk, we still have quite a lot of hunters. And when they go hunt seal hunting with the dogs, they also bring a plastic kayak on their sled, because once they shoot the seal, they need to just kayak the few meters to get it. So today, I would say the fake kayak, as they call it, like the kayak made of plastic, is used by real Greenlandic people. So I think it's also cool. It's also kayaking. Yeah. But let's say the kayaking in skin frame kayak, skin on frame kayaks. It's in that village, and also and that's one of the rare. I think that's the only settlement that actually is active in the championship.
Okay. Well, in Kayak USA, some of us have gotten really academic about studying things from way back. And so we know the design differences of an East Greenland kayak from a West Greenland kayak. And in the museums, if you've seen, there's some East Greenland kayak examples, which is beautiful. They have the little narwhal tusk or something, seals all the way down, like the Norsuk.
Exactly, on the Norsuk especially. It's extremely beautiful work. I agree with you. Yeah. Also in the museum, like in Amasalik Museum, which is the museum we have in Tasiilaq, you can see an old kayak frame, if I remember properly, and it's very impressive to see how tight it looks. So it was really tailored to the hunters, and it looks impossible to go inside the kayak, and that's very impressive and very beautiful to see. Definitely.
So the work that you do involving the work that you do now, tell me about that.
So I managed to be granted work and residence visa as a sustainability freelance advisor. So I've been.
And so my understanding is, to work in Greenland, if you're Danish, it's pretty easy to do. If you're not, it's a bit harder. But you managed to. Yeah.
So I demonstrated in my application my commitment towards Greenland, and how I thought that my skills were relevant for the market, and that the labor is short in my specific skills, which are ESG and sustainability.
What, ESG?
ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. Okay. So basically, I advise either investors or project promoters on how to identify and assess their impacts on the environment and on local communities. So I've worked on many projects financed, for instance, by the World Bank in sub-Saharan countries in Africa.
Oh yeah.
And the World Bank does not finance projects in Greenland, but we do have, it's the same, let's say, it's the same spirit. We're looking, Greenland has the ambition to have a strong economic development, but it also has the ambition to make it in a sustainable way that is respectful of nature.
So give an example of some entity that wants to do something that will come to you for advice. Like what?
Like for instance, now I'm advising a cruise company that operates in Greenland, and that is assessing the impacts, environmental and social impacts of its cruises in Greenland. So they actually currently have a postdoc researcher working on this matter, but because I do have extensive experience in impact assessments, and also I have a certain understanding and experience in Greenland, I'm advising them, and I'm advising the research team on this. So this is
cruises for tourists in Greenland.
Yeah, exactly.
So if I was a tour operator, what would be a really typical mistake I'd be making if I was coming here to set up stuff and didn't know what I was doing?
I'm not sure it's about mistakes, but it's... How can I answer that?
When you give input about things, there's some things that...
It really depends on the activities of the tour operator. So if it's sea activities, land activities, so it can be very, very... But let's say, for instance, on the sea, there are obvious considerations to have about the sea ice, for instance, because the sea ice is super important for the wildlife, but also for communities, because sea ice are actually bridges between communities, or access from a community to its seal nets, for instance. But not all cruises can break the sea ice, so it's not always relevant. But
that would, as a tour operator, I need a route here, so I'm going to break the ice right through there without realizing that that's a bridge for one community to another. Is that the kind of thing?
The thing is, there are always two levels. One level is just compliance with local regulations, and that's it. And then there is also the second level, is whether the operator or the investors are willing to also implement further standards. I know the Greenlandic regulations...
Further standards that might cost them a little bit more, but are better
or be really tracking and assessing what are their impacts, for instance, on sea ice, but let's say also on local communities. If we're talking about a big cruise going in a remote small village, how can it really benefit the village, and how can we avoid disturbance, and so it's about balance, and always keeping in mind that, of course, the local populations are supportive of tourism and are keen to see benefits for their communities, but how to make sure that there is a real positive benefits
the balance
at the end.
between too much
and so I can also advise mining companies. I've worked a lot in the mining sector, in the power industries, and these are also industries that are quite big in the radar in Greenland. So that would be the kind of projects I could target, but as an independent advisor always. Yeah.
Okay. And my understanding is they've decided not to mine uranium in Greenland. Is that correct?
There has been a huge political turmoil around that.
Yeah, I know, it was very controversial.
But still, mining is a very big prospect for Greenland, especially for the critical raw materials that would allow to supply like-minded countries, such as notably the European Union. There are some memorandum of understanding that have been established to develop the supply chain of critical raw materials in Greenland to supply, notably the European Union, to help with the green transition and the Green Deal, this kind of stuff. So there are quite a lot of mining prospects, although not so much yet are in the exploitation phase. But it's also mining. Beyond that, there's also mining for rubies or gold, also potentially.
Right.
Yeah, it's a very dynamic country and society, and there's so much different kind of lifestyle, and it's like, for me, Greenland right now has, it's like it has everything. It's in its own hands, and it has a very beautiful, very bright future in hand, and it's just in the path of it's being built currently.
Yeah.
And I really value that the decisions are mainly made by the Greenlandic people for Greenland, and I really, really praise that. And
so, do you see yourself continuing to live in Greenland for the long term?
Oh, I would love to. Yeah, definitely. Right. I'm totally in love with this country. Yeah. I feel home, and I have a very good life here. Like at least a very good social life, and I'm really I really believe that I will make it. Like, for the sustainability, there's so much already happening, and it's just a matter of market building. And so now I guess I have to, I just at the end of the year, I will have to ask for visa renewal, so it's a bit out of my hand.
Yeah.
And there's, let's say, the Greenlandic government doesn't make it easy for foreigners to come and live in Greenland. So I'm already very lucky to have this first visa for 1 year. So I'm enjoying it fully, and hopefully I will manage to renew afterwards. Yeah.
All right. So on my podcast, on every episode, I try to feature some bit of Greenlandic music.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the artists that come out with CDs, I'll have some of their music on there. Have you got any favorite Greenlandic musicians, artists?
I have, of course, quite a few in mind, but I'll go with Alifak. He's a good friend. He's a young guy from Denmark, and he's totally Greenlandic in a way. He's completely immersed in the Greenlandic culture. Right. He's totally fluent in kayaker, and he's a very good musician.
And he's put out his own music?
Exactly. So he...
I got to catch up with this, because I'm not... Alifak?
Alifak.
Okay.
Alifak. Alifak. So his name is Alfred, but Alifak is the Greenlandic way of pronouncing it.
Wow.
So it became his artist name.
Right.
And so he's really praised in Greenland. Most of the people know him, and also for his effort to have to learn kayaker, and he's also, and so he collaborates with most of the musicians in Nuuk, and he recently released his first song, which is called Our House is on Fire. And it's
in Greenlandic?
It's actually, this one is in English, but
really?
he writes poetry and music in Greenlandic also, and Danish, and so it's... But
he's in Nuuk?
He lives in Nuuk, yes.
I'll have to see if I can find him.
Yeah,
like a cool
I will
guy.
introduce you with pleasure, definitely. And so this is about climate change, and he managed to gather in the choir about 50 Greenlandic singers to sing on this song with him. Oh, so he's in duet with Mikke Thompson, who was singing yesterday at the championship closure. And I'm also part of it. And there's René Brandt, and then I don't have all the names I know. So I would say Ulla, Palingua, many people, and not necessarily professionals. It can be also just the voice of Greenlandic civil society singing together Our House is on Fire, which is once again about a call to wake up with regard to climate change. So I think that would be the one I would mention here.
I've tried to very badly pretend to sing Greenlandic, but I'm sure I wouldn't fool any Greenlander. But
okay, so which song are you?
Oh, I've done many songs on the podcast. Rather than play the CD, because I want people to buy the CD, I'll just make a version of it and encourage people to, on AtlanticMusic.com, they can get the real sound of it.
Okay, but, super cool.
That's what I do.
Wonderful.
All right. Any parting things to say, or what you've said has been very enlightening, and I'm sure that my listeners will get something out of it.
No, I think the kayak community is a beautiful community, and I'm very glad to be part of it. I've joined it only 2 years ago, really, and I found this community in Greenland, in East Greenland, in Nuuk, but also beyond. I've been part of kayak communities in France, but also in the USA, where I practiced my rolling, where I have been paddling in Cape Cod. And I've always found very, very nice and friendly and marvelous people, and so I'm really appreciative of that, and I really hope and I wish that we keep the spirits of helping each other and sharing knowledge, and I think that's super cool.
All right. Goeienacht.
Goeienacht.
And that is Sepanta, interviewed July 20th, 2024 at the Greenland National Kayaking Championships in Kulusuk. I should note that you may have heard her use the word nuan in reacting to things I say or in describing something. That is short for the Greenlandic word nuanakak. There are other variations of that word, but that could be translated with the word nice as an expression. So nice, nuan. I would hope that you think the Dubcast with Dubside is nuan.